How do you think he would stand against Akainu? It's just hard to gauge where Akainu's actually at. To me, whatever we see from Kizaru, like, he's stronger than that. And right now, there's different takes on whether Kizaru was going all out in the first place at all anyway.
If it's the Luffy right now on Egghead, Akainu probably, like, it's probably high diff, bro. But if it's Wano Luffy? Hey, alright.
As you just heard from them boys at that One Piece talk, the word on the street is now that the admirals might be able to defeat some of these Yonko. Specifically, people always been asking the question, can Luffy take on Akainu in Gear 5? Let's break it down, shall we? Good evening, everybody. Welcome back to Anime Sundays, the show where we talk about anime on Sundays, and I'm your host, Jared Ross. Spoiler for the One Piece manga if you're not caught up to date. I don't know why you're watching this channel if you're not caught up on One Piece manga. But as of recent battles on Egghead, specifically Kizaru versus Luffy and Luffy versus Saturn, the talk of the town has now been the rank of the OG admirals. Can Akainu beat Luffy? You know, Wano Luffy looking weaker than Egghead Luffy. All these questions that we One Piece fans want to know to properly, accurately rank our favorite characters. Now, first thing I want to address is, and the boys in that One Piece talk made a good point, the Luffy that we have been seeing on Wano on the roof of Onigashima is showing way greater feats than the Luffy that we are seeing in Egghead. Of course, those feats specifically relate to Haki. You know, on the roof we see Luffy showing advanced Conqueror's coding, advanced Ryu, better observation. I mean, we see him hanging with hybrid Kaido in base form with the strength of his Haki alone, right? We see him kind of recovering even a little bit better, and we know that Luffy is getting way more in tune with his Haki, from what I believe, because he is fighting an opponent that is specifically using Haki at such a great extent. Now you're asking me, well, like, Luffy's always using his Haki against strong opponents, but when you look at certain opponents that Luffy faces, he often judges his battle based on what he specifically needs to defeat his opponent. For Katakuri, he realized he had to unlock Future Sight to really get any work done. With Kaido and everybody else, it had to be Rio and Conqueror's coding. As we get to Egghead, we see now that Luffy has a lot better handle on Gear 5, so most of the time when he comes to these other marine antagonists, you know, Lucci, Kizaru, Saturn, or what have you, Luffy, I believe in his head, doesn't think he needs to go as hard with the Haki feats as he did with a Kaido or a Katakuri. We know Luffy doesn't put too much brain power in specifically what he's going to do when he fights. He usually lets his instincts kind of guide him, and I feel like that him going Gear 5 most of the time in Egghead is just him saying that this is all he really needs to do to hang with these characters who don't have the Haki efficiency that a Kaido would have. So that's why I feel like Luffy's feats in Egghead don't seem as fire as they are in Wano. Don't get me wrong, the Conqueror is still there, especially now that we're seeing it animated. We see how serious the Haki just automatically is when he goes into Gear 5. But I feel like when it comes to these certain villains, he hasn't been busting out the same thing as Kaido because he feels like the Gear 5 is a better solution for these specific type of enemies, maybe a quicker or more efficient solution, right? Even though we know Kaido will state that Haki conquers all. So with that being said, it's not that I think that Luffy is weaker in Egghead. I do think he's just not using all the abilities that he would normally use because he doesn't feel like he has to. So in a way, is he holding back? You could say so, but I think it's just more of he's playing the proper cards for the proper battle. Now, I said all that to say because there's a lot of talk of the town that Kizaru's holding back. He's not really giving it his all. He's emotional about his mission. And I agree, there are definitely some examples to show that Kizaru doesn't want to keep fighting this fight. But again, to say that he's holding back, I still think is a little dramatic. For example, when you look at characters like Kaido and Big Mom, even though they may not be going all out, bloodlusted first move, they're trying to kill everybody, you wouldn't still say that they're holding back when fighting a Kid, a Law, a Zoro, you know, the worst gen on that roof. They're fighting based on scenario. Obviously, they think they're the strongest two ever to walk the earth, so they're only gonna put out what they think is necessary, right? I feel like in some instances, you can say the same for Kizaru. Kizaru is on a mission. He's trying to do what he needs to get done, but I feel like if you're getting turned into a pizza, you're getting, you know, tambourine thrown around multiple times, you're like, dang, you know, White Star gun. There's only so much holding back you can do before you're like, okay, my life might be in danger here. With Kaido and Big Mom, it was kind kind of like, you wouldn't say they were holding back, but they weren't going all out off rip either. They're gauging a fight like normal fighters would. Yes, I do feel like Kizaru is not as adamant about, you know, just killing Vegapunk and Bonnie and all that, but he is still going through with his mission pretty much 98%. He's still putting Vegapunk in critical condition. He's still trying to kill Bonnie. Like, he is still doing the work that he needs to do. So based off the Luffy versus Kizaru fight, I still think Luffy is still stronger than Kizaru, because at the end of the day, the moves that Luffy was able to get off, he was only be able to get them off because proper skill that Luffy has while using his Awakened Devil Fruit. I don't think it was necessarily because Kizaru was holding back. Is he going all out off rip? No, but neither was everybody else when they were fighting, except for maybe like a Saturn. Based on that, if I look at Luffy versus Kizaru, who had the upper hand, who's still stronger, I still do think Luffy is stronger than Kizaru, especially if he did want to pull out all those hockey feats, but I feel like he thought Gear 5 was going to handle the situation much better, because we know Kizaru doesn't really have that many crazy hockey feats either. So based on all that, if you kind of look at what the rankings of the OG admirals have been, it's usually always been Akainu, Kuzan, and Kizaru. We know when Kuzan came to Garp, some other people were trying to say Kuzan was holding back as well. Again, it's emotional for both sides. I believe that Garp and Kuzan both have emotional ties, but Garp is doing what he needs to do for the sake of justice, for the sake of his new proteges, and I feel that Kuzan has made up his mind of the side he wants to be on, and that, again, sure, they're both not going all out off rip. You could tell that Garp is still stronger than Kuzan. The Blackbeard pirates are pretty much jumping Garp. He fell for the okie doke trying to save Kobe, but to say that Kuzan was holding back when he's getting blue hold and we seeing all this, or blue note or whatever it's called, and we're seeing the crazy, you know, Conqueror's gravity galaxy impact that Garp is doing, I don't think Kuzan is holding back either. So in that case, I still do think Garp is stronger than Kuzan. Now to the main point of the video. We talk about Luffy versus Akainu, right? Now, if we kind of look at the justifications of the gaps between the admirals and the 2-year time skip, it does seem like they have gotten a little bit stronger. Maybe Kizaru wasn't doing this much training, and sure, Kuzan was kind of on his pirate thing. He might not have been doing no intense training like he did when he was a Marine. But if there's one character where I think we have to give a little bit of leeway to be on the diligence of staying strong, I think it's definitely Akainu. We know in the Marineford War, even though it did kind of look like Whitebeard was packing him up a little bit, Akainu held in there for a good amount of time, dealing with the level of hockey that Whitebeard has, and the Quake fruit. So we know the durability is there. We know the stamina is there because of Kuzan, and we know the mastery of the fruit is there. Now, we don't know if Logias necessarily have awakened fruits yet. We kind of haven't touched on that subject yet, but we have to assume in the slightest bit that Akainu has also gotten stronger over this 2-year time. Now, if Luffy is showing again all those hockey feats that he was showing against Kaido, I do think that if he uses the same path, all the hockey feats he used against Kaido goes to Gear 5, of course I think he'll be Akainu. Do I think Akainu could survive a Bajran gun or a giant Luffy or a Kaminari? I think these things would be very, very hard for him, especially because we know speed-wise, Kaido and Luffy are a lot faster than Akainu. But if Luffy is trying to kind of play around with Gear 5 off rip and is underestimating Akainu and the fact that he probably would be a little bit more bloodlusted and eager to kill Luffy a lot faster than a Kizaru, or how Kuzan did Garp, then I do see Akainu having an advantage in being able to defeat a Gear 5 Luffy if he's not careful. But also, by the way they animated that Lucci fight, I also think we do sleep on Awakened Lucci a little bit, especially his speed. I think that Luffy being, you know, able to outspeed an Awakened Lucci, and this is kind of like his main point, I feel like it would give him a huge, huge advantage against Akainu in Gear 5. So if you ask me, 1v1 all-out battle, I do think I would still give it to Gear 5 Luffy, except this time I would give it a way more extreme high difficulty. Y'all know me in the past, I used to say that Luffy, as soon as the time skip happened, he was way stronger than the admirals, but now that we're actually seeing them box for real, I do think it is a lot closer gap between at least Luffy and the admirals now. Again, we know Akainu has way more stamina than Luffy, but that's if Luffy starts pulling out the gears, and I feel like in that base form, he still would be able to hang with Akainu unless his haki has somehow gotten to a much level larger than the other two admirals. So yeah, y'all, I still have Luffy over Akainu by a smidget. Again, I do think that based on who Luffy's fighting and what he is seeing their specialty as, that is kind of what he goes with when he wants to go about the fight. If he kind of goes off rip Gear 5 like he did with Lucci and Kizaru, there's a lot of things that Akainu won't necessarily have an answer for unless unless his haki is also on Conqueror's level, or at least, you know, somewhat of a little bit advanced armament level. But if Akainu is still kind of the same level, pretty much still close to Kuzan and Kizaru, then yes, I definitely think that Luffy would definitely win that fight. Now, if he's way stronger, then hey, he's way stronger and it is what it is until we see what Oda has for us. And with that, we'll see y'all next Sunday.